Regarding the feminist movement, what does the slogan "make the personal political" mean?
To me, that I always hated that slogan. What it really means is you take your personal damage. And one of the things that's very obvious in those very early days of the women's movement, how many of the radical women leaders of the movement themselves had really disturbed backgrounds and were very, very violent. And then you make that political. So if my dad's a shit, all men are shits. If you say that, you can do almost anything you like. You could go from the personal and make it political. So what happened is a sufficient group of women got together to complain bitterly, because you have to remember the beginning of the feminist movement was a Marxist movement. It was women in the left of the politics in Britain who decided that they had had enough of working with men on the left and were going to have their own, in quotes, movement. So our feminist movement never grew from a grassroots of the working class women that they were always talking about. There weren't any working class women. It was actually academics, university lecturers, young women students was the beginning of the women's movement. The most successful part of it is that at that point in the 70s, if you think about it, the majority of women who were journalists internationally were very heavy radical feminists. So they had the women's pages. And of course, male journalists and male editors, seeing it as, in quotes, a woman's problem, left it to them. And very quickly there was a savage kind of censorship, and anybody who dared argue was in very serious trouble. They were very, very highly organized Marxist groups of women of one sort or another. When I remember being horrified when I saw them storming the Miss World competition, thinking to myself, how can these women talk about liberation for women and women supporting each other and then go and bully a section of other women that they don't like because they're doing something they don't approve of.
Put a woman behind that counter! Get lost! Freedom!
And outside, and this is in the press cuttings, there were huge demonstration with banners, and on the banners it said, all men are bastards, all men are rapists. And I asked the police, I went down and said to the police, if that was black men or Jews, you'd arrest those women. But why don't you arrest them? They just looked very uncomfortable. And one of them said, we're frightened of them. Over the 12 years that I was running the refuge, if I went to speak, there were screaming feminists outside. I tried to publish a book called Prone to Violence. We finally did get it published. But I had to have a police escort all around England, and there were death threats and bomb threats. And the final moment came for me after struggling for all those years, when the bomb disposal unit came to my house, because there was a suspect package, and said everything that came to me had to go to them first because they were concerned about my safety and the safety of my family. And that's when I left England and went into exile for something like 15 years.